Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really focusing in, honing in on just one argument from a source. It's a blog post called "The Truth Always Comes Out: The Consequences of Lying About Others." And it's not just about, don't lie. It's digging into the personal cost, almost like a strategic failure.
That's right. Our goal here is to really analyze this core idea from the source. That when you lie about someone else, it's not just hurting them, it's fundamentally hurting yourself. We want to understand why the source argues that trying to deceive others actually ends up exposing the liar's own character almost instantly.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Where does this temptation even start? The source points to the initial motivation, right? It calls it a perceived, quick, and easy way to protect oneself or gain an advantage, like a shortcut.
Exactly. It's that allure of the quick fix. You're in a tough spot, maybe a rivalry or you messed up, and the lie feels like this instant shield or maybe leverage. But the source immediately contrasts that. It says, hold on, the moment you tell that lie, there's this dual damage happening simultaneously.
Dual damage.
Yeah.
Okay, so not just a risk down the road, but damage right away.
Precisely. That's the key point. You might be focused on hurting the other person's reputation.
Yeah.
That's the first obvious consequence. But at the same time, you're inflicting that second wound on yourself, exposing your own lack of integrity, your own character flaws. It's like the price is paid up front, even before you see if the lie worked.
So any advantage is fleeting, but that hit to your own character is immediate. You're essentially spending your credibility on something very short term. It's like the liar thinks they're putting up a smoke screen, but the source is saying, no, you're actually holding up a big sign pointing right back at yourself.
That really is the crux of it. The source insists the lie will not change the truth about who you are, your basic character, but the act of lying forces everyone else to see that character more clearly. It's an unintentional act of self-revelation. You intend to obscure, but you actually achieve clarity about yourself.
Okay, so what specifically gets revealed? The source gets pretty detailed here, right? It's not just saying you're a liar. It points to two specific negative traits.
Yes, exactly. The first one is sort of transactional. It shows the person is willing to manipulate the truth to serve their own interests. It frames the lie as a calculated tool, showing that the liar puts their own desired outcome, that advantage, ahead of facts, ahead of potentially hurting someone else. It confirms a deep self-interest.
And I guess the bigger the lie, the more manipulative it shows you're willing to be. Like a small fib versus a huge fabricated story.
That's a good point. The effort you put into the lie itself becomes a measure of how much integrity you're willing to sacrifice for that gain. Yeah. But that first trait, manipulation, is tied directly to the second one the source identifies, which is about how you handle pressure.
That's the courage piece, isn't it? Or the lack of it.
Yeah. The source says the lie instantly reveals a lack the courage to face the consequences of their actions. If you lie to protect yourself, you're basically broadcasting that you can't handle the truth of the situation. You can't or won't accept accountability. The lie itself is the proof of that avoidance.
Wow. So those two things together, manipulating for self-interest and this cowardice, this fear of consequences, that single act of lying about someone paints a really unflattering self-portrait, doesn't it?
It does. And according to the source, the conclusion is pretty stark. Lying about someone will only reveal your true character. It's like a permanent label you've just applied to yourself. And the key thing is how it happens. It's not waiting for someone else to expose you. Your own action is the exposure. The damage isn't external. It's an internal cost made visible.
Right. And if it stems from cowardice and self-interest, that brings up the whole question of sustainability. If you lie to avoid one specific consequence, haven't you just created a bigger problem to manage? The source uses that phrase, a web of deceit.
Yeah, the web metaphor is perfect because it traps the person who spun it. The minute you create a false reality, you're committed to maintaining it. So now you're not just dealing with the original problem you tried to avoid. You're constantly managing this complex story.
That sounds incredibly exhausting. What does that look like practically?
Well, think about the mental energy. You have to remember who you told what, when, what the details were. Make sure nothing contradicts anything else. The source says it's difficult to maintain. And it makes sense, right? Lies are inherently unstable because reality keeps moving. But your fabricated story is static. It needs constant patching and adjusting.
Because the real world isn't following your script, and eventually those threads, those details, are going to fray or contradict each other.
Exactly. The source is pretty clear that this whole structure is just, well, unsustainable. It argues the web can eventually catch up to the liar. It's almost like a logistical certainty, not just a moral one. The sheer complexity just overwhelms you over time. Life happens, you get distracted, maybe the reason you lied in the first place doesn't even seem that important anymore, but you're still stuck managing the lie.
And when that structure finally collapses, the prediction is, well, it's right there in the title of the source, isn't it? The truth always comes out.
Yes, it states it very definitively.
Mm.
In the end, the truth always has a way of coming out, and those who are willing to lie will eventually be exposed.
Mm-hmm.
So the lie offers zero actual long-term protection. It just delays the consequences and adds the penalty of being exposed as dishonest on top of whatever the original issue was.
Okay, so if lying is this exhausting, self-damaging strategy that's doomed to fail, the source obviously points towards an alternative, right?
Naturally, it brings us back to that age-old saying, honesty is the best policy. The source argues it holds true precisely because it's the only sustainable way forward. It presents this clear choice. The path of deception, which is driven by fear and requires constant exhausting effort, or the path of integrity, which might be harder up front, but is ultimately simpler.
Simpler, but it requires that initial bravery, doesn't it? You have to be willing to accept the truth, whatever it is, and deal with the fallout.
That's the critical moment of choice. The source recommends it's far better to face the truth and deal with any consequences that may come than to live that life of deceit. This is where you reverse that initial act of cowardice. Choosing honesty, even when it's hard, requires courage.
Taking that initial hit, maybe a painful one, saves your integrity in the long run.
It guarantees it, according to this perspective. The source points out that the consequences of the truth are usually finite. You deal with them, maybe it's tough, but then you move on. The consequences of the lie, however, are ongoing, that constant maintenance, the damage to your character. It doesn't end. Choosing honesty preserves something permanent about your reputation.
And what's the payoff for making that tougher, honest choice? What's the reward?
It's not just avoiding the inevitable crash of the lie. It's achieving a kind of freedom. The source talks about maintaining integrity and living a life free from guilt and deception. Freedom from that mental burden. Freedom from the self-disgust, maybe, that comes with hiding things. That seems to be the ultimate benefit proposed here.
And it's not just about passively telling the truth either, is it? There's an action component mentioned.
Right, it's not just fessing up. The source includes the need to make amends if necessary. So honesty involves taking accountability, trying to repair any damage done, and rebuilding trust. That detail shows it's not just about transparency for its own sake, but about restorative action. That seems to be the final piece in actually achieving that freedom from guilt.
Okay, so let's pull this together for the listener. We've looked at why someone might lie about others, how the source argues it immediately backfires by revealing character flaws, and why that strategy is ultimately unsustainable. The core takeaway here, really driven home by this source, is that dishonesty isn't just morally wrong, it's actually, well, it's just an ineffective self-destructive strategy. Any temporary gain is completely overshadowed by the permanent damage to the liar's own integrity.
Absolutely. I think what really stands out is that stark contrast the source draws. You have the fleeting comfort or maybe the temporary shield the lie seems to offer, that quick and easy way, versus the enduring quality of your character that gets instantly revealed the second you choose deceit. When you lie about someone else, the source is clear. The damage to your own reputation is immediate, it's self-inflicted, and that price just keeps compounding until the truth inevitably comes out and forces a final reckoning.
A really compelling argument for choosing the harder path, the path of courage and honesty every time.
Indeed, it certainly gives you something to think about.